There's obviously no cure-all for what and how people are feeling right now, or ever really. Like, what has Hope for the Day found effective for helping people deal with the complicated feelings and emotions everybody's been dealing with in this situation?
Yeah, so we're very much leave no stone unturned. Everybody's journey looks different. There's no one magic wand that is going to like cure what ails you. You have to find that perfect balance that works for you, and sometimes it's one thing and sometimes it's another thing. So we're very much the entire organization is all, you need to find your own path. So as much as we would like to say that like one therapy visit is going to help where you at or help where you're at, or one pill is going to cure what you're going through, that's not necessarily the case. I know that for me, one pill isn't going to fix anything that's going on in this noodle, and that's why my doctor gives me a bottle of 30. You're not going to make any progress with just one of anything. So I can speak from my own personal perspective again. I am a big time advocate of therapy. So I think that the whole world should go to therapy, and it's not just for when something's wrong. It's a way to keep you healthy. Like, you go to the dentist to get cleanings so you don't have to get a root canal every time you go. It's the same thing for therapy. Like, as an emotional sponge, I take on a lot of feelings and emotions, and sometimes I get really, really full. And going to therapy allows me the opportunity to go in there and just like wring out all of those feelings, and help me to be more open and more present, and just more helpful for myself and others. So I use a mix of like therapy, so clinical, I take medication, and non-clinical, so making sure that I'm running, that I'm eating food that is fueling my body and my mind. And some days I'm more consistent than others. There are other days where I want to eat a pint of ice cream, and I do that. Sometimes I like to have what I like to call a heavy old fashioned on a Tuesday evening. So finding those valves that work for the individual is super important. And organizations like Hope for the Day can help to connect anybody who's watching this who needs assistance. We can help connect you to those resources. We are not clinicians, we are not doctors, but we can act as a bridge to those resources and help you to navigate that very, very daunting and crowded field, because it's a lot. It's hard to find. It's hard to find a therapist. It's hard to find the things that work for you. So we are available for that.
Well, that's actually interesting. I never really thought of it, but you do deal with basically hearing like the plight of other individuals all the time. And like, I know that even just dealing with like just a friend or two or whatever, and if they're going through something rough, that is tough on me. But to basically, like, your professional life is hearing this from a bunch of people over and over and over and over again. Like, how does that work on you? How does that take a toll on you? And how do you kind of navigate, making sure that like I know that so many times people say like, don't take your work home with you. So yeah. Like, how do you kind of sift through that?
Yeah. Well, some days are easier than others to leave it in the office, especially because my office is about 8 feet that way. And throughout my work here, I've heard a lot of fucked up stuff. Some really, really intense things, like some of the things that I've been, some of the conversations I had, especially on Warped Tour, got very, very heavy very quickly. But it starts for me, is the gratitude and understanding that I am in this really unique position where I have the ability to be support for someone who may not have it anywhere else in their life. And sometimes when people come to speak to me, and this is even when prior to this role, I worked in HR, and I worked for an international fast fashion retailer for about 14 years. And I worked in HR for maybe like 4 or 5 of that. And recognizing that when someone comes forward with something that is like really scary or really challenging, it's knowing that it takes a lot of courage for them to have that conversation. And if they have gotten that courage to come and speak to you, this might be the hardest day of their entire life and the scariest day of their entire life. So
yeah, that's vulnerable as hell.
Yes. Yeah. So it's important to recognize the courage first that it takes to have that conversation and to even be open to having it. And then knowing that, okay, today I have the capacity to receive that type of information. So I'm going to receive it, and I'm going to let this person have the experience that they need to be able to vent that pressure off in that moment. I mean, there are certainly times where if I'm feeling really depleted, or I'm like having a real shit day, where I am not able to receive the feelings and the conversations, but I've gotten much, much better since I started going to therapy at asserting boundaries and setting those boundaries and saying like, hey, I can see that you are in pain. I can see that you're struggling. I want to have this conversation. I want to help you, but I'm not able to have this conversation right now. Can we schedule a time tomorrow? But if it needs to be right now, I can link you to someone who is ready to receive that. So knowing that like I have a network of people, that I'm not the only one. I'm not responsible for fixing anyone, because that's not what we do. And I'm not responsible for being available to anyone 24 hours a day, because the only person that I'm truly responsible for is myself. And I need to keep myself full, because you can't drink from an empty cup, and you can't help others when your cup is empty either. So being able to assert those boundaries, but also know that you could be the only person that has ever given this person the time of day to speak their feelings and their experiences.
That's kind of amazing. Just like, and then I imagine even whenever you say like, I don't have the capacity to like receive you in this moment, and you like say, but I have this person for you, I have these resources for you, or whatever. The fact that they trusted you in that moment then probably, gets directed to whatever you direct them to. Like they trusted you enough to come to you, then they will probably, or obviously, trust the direction in which you steer them to, saying that this person or like these resources, are your next step.
Yeah, that's the hope. If it's somebody that I know personally, I would say yes, that's what happens more often than not. Or more often than not, they're like, okay, well, let's just talk tomorrow, and I can give them my full attention. We can schedule a time, schedule an hour or 2 hours, and then that is my task for that time, is to be present and be with that person. But if it's a stranger, so for example, like at Warped Tour, we have a lot of people who would come to the tent and just speak to us. And if I received the message that was like very troubling, or something that weighed on me very heavily, I would communicate very clearly to the other people that were working with me, like, hey, I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to step away, or I'll just sell merch for now, or hand out resources for now. And if I receive something else, I would say like, hey, thank you so much for coming to speak to us. This person right here is ready to speak to you. So it's almost easier with a stranger, because you don't necessarily have that trust and that relationship. And if they're coming forward, they just want to be heard, and they want to be able to vent those feelings and see what else is out there. So it's almost easier in those situations. It's like the close personal relationships that are always more challenging, because there's a lot more riding on it personally too. If I'm like, hey man, like I can't listen to you right now, I run the risk of like not being able to assist a friend who might really need it. But if this person is my friend, they would know that I do want to help them, and I will help them. And hopefully they respect that boundary.